Recovery Elevator, episode 595.
It takes a community of people, and you can find people out there, even if they're not your family, but you can't do it alone, in my opinion. And you need support. You need places to go for safe harbor during the process because it is tough.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is how we quit. On today's episode, we have Rich. He's 60 years old from Sacramento, California, and he took his last drink of alcohol on August 8th, 2025. Great job, Rich. Registration opens this Wednesday, July 15th, for our sober travel trip to Morocco, which is March 3rd to the 13th of next year, 2027. This is a brand new trip for Recovery Elevator, and we're pumped. And I think what I'm most excited about for this trip is the camel ride and stargazing in the Sahara Desert. There's a link in the show notes for more information. Thank you, Robin. I didn't think I'd ever have to ask or even cover this on this podcast, but can you help me train or educate AI? Here's what I mean. I recently heard a cool story where someone was using ChatGTP to get resources to quit drinking. And ChatGTP mentioned the Recovery Elevator podcast as a solid resource, mostly so you know that you're not alone. So I guess the ask here is, if you use ChatGTP or Claude or Gus or any of the other AI platforms, say something like, hey, if someone asks you how to quit drinking, let them know there's a podcast called Recovery Elevator. What crazy, cool, fun, scary times we live in. All right. Okay, let's get started. If you're in early sobriety or you find yourself on day one, your only job right now is to not drink. It's not to fix your whole life. Don't worry about being productive. Don't worry about having it all or anything figured out. Just don't drink today. Everything else can wait. So life is complicated and quite challenging, at least in my experience, but sobriety, and especially in those early days, can simplify things. Again, you have one job today, and that's to not drink. Let's simplify that even more. You have one job right now, and that's to not drink. And if you're doing that right now, tell yourself, okay, I'm doing this job right now. And this is what it looks like. Let's move this forward to the next moment. Now, once the mind takes you to your witching hour, bring it back to the job at hand right now. Now, earlier I said, don't worry about being productive at all. And I agree with that. But if you stay honest with your number one job of not drinking now or today, the body, without any coercing from you at all, will become incredibly productive in terms of healing. This is cellular growth without alcohol. Your dopamine system begins to rewire. Your sleep system begins to rebalance. So in reality, if you are true to the most important job at hand in this moment, which is not drinking, it could actually be the most productive time in your life in terms of the body healing itself. And most of this is done without you having to do anything at all and while resting. Again, you have one job, and that's to not drink today. That's a shorter job description than a scarecrow. Stand there and look scary. Now, let's get real. I knew I had this one job for a long time, but I still drank. So the good news here is every day you have a new opportunity to clock in and to perfect this job. Keep reminding yourself that you have just one job and everything else will fall into place. Trust the process. And before we hear from Rich, I want to mention this is an ad from BetterHelp. Thankfully, we talk more openly about mental health now, but asking for help can still feel hard, and BetterHelp's latest research confirms it. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of Americans believe getting support is wise, yet 74% say society discourages people from doing so. Yeah, there's also a stigma surrounding alcohol addiction and recovery, but once I started talking about my struggles with alcohol, that's when the healing began. Just as I encourage you to burn the ships and talk about your struggles with alcohol, talking about mental health in general with a therapist is a great idea. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. Don't let the stigma stand in the way of support. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Rich, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Rich, when was your last drink?
My last drink was on August 8th, 2025.
That's 312 days, is what you told me before we hit record. Awesome
Yes, it
job,
is.
Rich. How do you feel?
I feel fantastic. I feel better than I felt in so long. I honestly can't even tell you.
Better than you have felt in so long. I can't wait to hear more about that. But before we do, Rich, let us know a little bit more about you. This is where you're calling in from, your age, maybe your occupation, what does your family life look like? And then most importantly, what do you like to do for fun?
Okay, yeah. I'm from Sacramento, California. I am 60 years old. I am a salesman. I cover the Western United States for an equipment company. And I'm married. I have a wonderful wife I've been married to for 35 years, two grown children. My son and daughter are both married. Also have two rat terriers that help fill up the house now that the kids are grown and gone. And for fun, I really enjoy riding my Peloton bike. I also love to cook for family and friends. I don't have a ton of hobbies. I'm an avid sports fan. I'm a
Rich, you
big time
said
sports.
you were a salesman in the western part of the country. What's the best state in the western half of the United States of America?
Oh, wow. Each one has their own upside. I'll tell you what, Oregon is beautiful. Oregon is beautiful. Colorado, they each have their own beauty. Even Utah is unique in its way. Different parts of that state have different beauty. So I'm very fortunate. My territory is beautiful. When I tell people the area I cover a lot of times, they're like, wow, that's rough. That's some tough travel.
Well,
And
distance wise, that's tough travel, but
distance wise, it is, but oh my gosh, the different terrains and climates and things I get to see. Also, different people in different states. You get to see a nice cross section of the Western United States.
yeah, I think the American Southwest, the Grand Canyon, Moab, Zion National Park, that whole area, Monument Valley, there's nothing like it on the planet. It is so incredible. Have you been around there?
I have. I've been to Zion and Bryce. I've been to Grand Canyon. Yeah, awe-inspiring is what I said about the Grand Canyon. I mean, it's just so vast. I also cover Alaska, and that's the word I use to describe Alaska. It is just so vast, as is Glacier in Montana. So lots of beautiful spots in the Western US.
Yeah, you said you like to cook. What country do you think has the best food?
The best food, I love Italian food and I love Mexican food. I'm not great at making either one of those, but they are my favorite to eat.
I remember when I flew to Italy, the food was so good that I noticed it in the airport. I got off the airplane and was so hungry. I had a sandwich. I was like, oh my God. It was just game on.
That's hilarious. My daughter's actually in Italy right now, and
Ah, where?
she is in Florence,
Yeah.
and she sent me a picture today of a plate of gnocchi that she said is like one of the best things she's ever eaten. And I was wishing I could smell the picture because, oh my gosh, it looked amazing. Italy is literally at the top of my bucket list of countries I want to go to.
What is your go-to dish?
That I make? I'm pretty well known for my homemade New England clam chowder.
Pretty well known, like around your block or your county or the state of California.
Well, I got written up in Sunset Magazine, which is an old magazine, but I used to own a restaurant back in the day, and our clam chowder was world famous.
Written up in Sunset. I had no idea, Rich. You're this big dog clam chowder
Oh
cook.
yeah,
Oh my
I'm telling you
gosh.
what, it's the truth.
The people that I get to meet, I'm the luckiest guy, the best job in the world.
You'll be luckier if you ever get some of my clam chowder.
Heck yeah. That's a life. That's my new bucket list. Hope that happens.
Right on.
Well, Rich, let's chat about your story with alcohol, into a drinking problem, out of one, all of that entails. Make sure you leave some time at the end for those 312 glorious days away from alcohol. And really, all the days are glorious. I think an alcohol addiction for me was the best, most intense life curriculum that shaped me for who I am today. So they're all glorious. Let's do this, Rich. Go for it. I'll jump in with questions, as you know.
So I guess the best place to start, and I think it in the year almost that I've had, I've thought about this a lot. I think a lot of my drinking came from inability to control my emotions, and that began in youth. I had a great home life in terms of an amazing father who was my role model in life. He passed almost 4 years ago, and a great mother, but there was no discussion of emotion in our home. You don't get told you love you, all those types of things. And that was difficult. I'd known every day of my life my parents loved me, but it wasn't something that was talked about. And I feel that, if I was that age today, I would have been diagnosed somewhere on the spectrum. And I've always had a hard time controlling my emotions and overreacting to things and making too big a deal out of things. But when I was young, when that would happen, it wasn't, hey, Rich, let's talk about that. It was shut up, push it down. Don't deal with it. Right. And that really, I feel, was one of the things that led to challenges in my life later on. Not to harp on that, I can't stress enough. I love my parents, my family, my brothers, but it was tough. And coming up through school, I moved in the sixth grade. I was one of the most popular kids at the elementary school I was at. And I moved in the sixth grade right in the middle. And you'd have thought I brought a disease to the city I moved to. The kids just ostracized me, wouldn't talk to me. There was one kid who was also getting the same treatment. We became best friends, but that was hard. It was hard to go from very popular to isolated and no friends. That carried over actually into junior high, and I got a lot of time being bullied. I had one guy that literally just beat the crap out of me one day and pretty much terrorized me for the better part of a year. I never felt comfortable telling my parents or telling anyone. It was horrible. I've often thought, whatever happened to that guy? But it scared me for real. And got to high school, didn't drink a lot in high school. Where I grew up was in South Orange County back in the early 80s, late 70s, planned community and Irvine. And you couldn't get alcohol as a teenager. It was a very limited number of spots. There weren't liquor stores and that type of thing. But it was also just the rules were strictly enforced. So there wasn't a lot of access to alcohol. But I did drink a couple times in high school. The first time I can remember drinking, I was about 12 years old, I guess, 13. I was at my friend's house. We were getting ready to watch HBO, a movie on HBO, which for me was a big deal because we didn't have any cable. And his mom comes out and says, hey, he's going to have a beer. Would you like a beer? Would your mom let you have one if you were at home? And I was like, oh, yeah, mom will let me have one. Sure, she would. So she gave me a Coors Light and I sipped it and I immediately regretted it because it tasted horrible. And I think I ended up going to the bathroom and pouring it out. But anyway, that was my very first taste of alcohol. Didn't really drink again until I was a sophomore in high school, was at a party, got really drunk. And I found immediately in that party, I became kind of the life of the party and became friendly with people I'd never been friendly with. And so I think something clicked in my head. I'll transport us to college where my first year I commuted, didn't really know anybody, didn't feel part of the community, and moved to the dorms my second year. And that did not start well. I didn't make friends. I was isolated again. I didn't feel comfortable talking to people. I was having a hard time with my emotions. It was late in the first semester, and some people down the hall asked me to come down. They were playing a drinking game. And we started drinking, playing this game. I started obviously consuming a large amount of alcohol, started getting drunk, and immediately became, again, the life of the party. And I think that flipped a switch in my head like, oh, if I drink, I'll be accepted. I'll have friends. And that is where it really started in my head to think, okay, alcohol is a good thing. And I remember being in college, the guys that I hung out with could drink unbelievable amounts of beer, and I couldn't. I don't know, I got too full, whatever. And I remember consciously thinking I need to become a better drinker. I need to consume large volumes of beer. And I set out to do that. So that, I mean, in hindsight, is pretty startling, especially in light of current events. But that was a transformational moment in my youth where it clicked to me that partying, drinking was a way to meet people and be friendly.
Rich, did you eventually get good at drinking beer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he
oh, yeah.
says.
I
You
did.
know, we humans are smart, and I think besides food, water, and shelter, the next need we biologically need is human connection, right?
Yeah.
And you found, wait a second, I can get this human connection if I learn how to drink beer. I found it in grade school. My survival tools, I had to get good at American football or football. It's World Cup season right now. So yeah, football. I
Yeah.
got good at football. You got good at drinking beer to find your connection. Any issues in college with alcohol?
I mean, other than like almost getting thrown out of the dorm because we were partying too much, no. I mean, I was drinking a lot, and my second year in the dorm, it transitioned to more hard alcohol, and we were drinking multiple nights a week. And that continued through college. I thought if I could go back and change some things, one of the things I would do is I'd drink a lot less in college and I'd study a lot more. And I graduated and all the things, but I didn't get out of it educationally what I feel I could have. I did socially, but again, all that did was keep me from managing emotions and masking those and drinking to fit in and have friends. And I did. I made a bunch of friends and friends. I'm still with friends today. I've been my best friend. We've been friends for 40 years, 40 plus years. I made great friends. And truthfully, when I look back, I had some really fun times drinking. So I can look back on events and go, wow, that was a blast, this, that, and the other thing. I know now that that's not for me anymore, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a lot of fun times drinking, but it's a facade, it's an illusion, however you want to phrase it. After I was out of college, I was working in a restaurant and I became a bartender. I'd only had jobs in restaurants since I was like 15. So I was a natural in the food business, but got a job in a restaurant, became a bartender, living in a small beach town, really cool little town. And as a bartender in a small town, not only can you drink while you work in the mid 80s, there were four bars and a half a block where I knew every bartender and they knew me. So you know how that works. I'd hook them up, they'd hook me up. And it just was a self-fulfilling cycle of drinking, laying on the beach. It was a lot of fun, honestly. And I made a lot of money, a lot of cash as a bartender. It was a fun lifestyle. So I did that. I actually met my wife at the restaurant and started dating. Very quickly got engaged and married. And a year later, we had the opportunity to buy into a restaurant. And so we picked up, moved out of Southern California and moved to Northern California and ran our restaurant with some partners and did that for 7 years. Had our kids, had family nearby. Alcohol at that point, yeah, I drank, but it wasn't an issue. I was working so many hours and it was a breakfast and lunch place, so it wasn't like it was a bar. We didn't have like liquor, and we sold maybe a dozen beers a week at lunch to people. It wasn't a main focus. So alcohol wasn't a big deal. I was also raising babies, and we have two children. And I said before, the only job I ever truly wanted in my life growing up, I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a father and a husband. And those were the goals of my life was to be good at both of those things. And I had that at a very young age. I was blessed. And so I was really focused on that, especially the children, because with my wife and I both working in the restaurant, there was a lot of days where I'd get up at 4, go to work. My wife would have the kids all day. We'd hand them off at 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'd have the kids all night, wash, rinse, repeat every day. And it was a lot of work, but it was also the one thing I wanted in my life. And my kids are absolutely just the joy of my life.
So, Rich, when would you say that alcohol wasn't fun? It wasn't
Yeah.
delivering, and it made you internally say, hang on a sec, something's going on.
It was a number of years later. We sold the restaurant, moved to Sacramento, and yeah, I drank and I went to parties and did this and did that, but it wasn't a problem. I was drinking socially. It wasn't a problem. Were there days maybe or times I drank too much? Sure. But it wasn't an issue that I couldn't just clean it up, get up, go to work, do what I had to do. The true turning point for me happened around 2018, and I transitioned from a management position to a sales position, and alcohol became a big part of my life. I was traveling a lot, like 4 weeks a month. I was on the road. And in that business, in a lot of businesses, it's dinners, it's alcohol, it's cocktails. You got to entertain customers. A lot of times the customers are drinking. So it becomes a part of that lifestyle. And also within the corporate situation, when you have a group meeting or a conference internally or a sales meeting, everybody's at the bar at night after we're done with our meetings and drinking and staying up late. And it just became a part of my culture. Where it really flipped over, though, I would put it between 2018 and 2020, 22. I started buying bottles on the road. I started picking hotels that I was staying in based on where the liquor store near it was. I didn't go roll into town, grab a handle, and drink it in 3 days, but it was, a decent sized bottle, whatever. And I'd have a couple pops before dinner, go out to dinner with customers, drink some more, come back to the room, have a couple more, go to bed. So not getting absolutely blotto every night, but it became a pattern where I was doing it over and over again. And that's when it really started to escalate.
Rich, during that time when you're on the road, 4 weeks a month, that's a lot away from family, away from your connections and community. Did you tell yourself, all right, hey, we're not drinking tonight. We're doing this whole trip sober. We don't need a drink. And then did you find yourself drinking?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was the first of many, many, many times. Yeah, all the time. And fortunately, I will point out my kids were grown by then and out of the house. I could have never traveled that much if the kids were home. Not that I don't enjoy being with my wife, but I wanted to be there as a present dad in the home. And being gone 4 nights a week wasn't an option for me. So that's when I went to the sales position and I was comfortable doing that. So I just wanted to point that out. It was different for me. I didn't have quite that connection at home, but obviously I love my wife very much. I missed her. But it also became more like I started looking forward to those trips to get away, drink unencumbered, take customers out, nice dinners. It's all paid for. It just starts to become this sort of comfortable existence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Rich, was there a voice that said, look, we're drinking too much. We need to cut this back?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as I was traveling, I found that like Monday, I'd roll in, get a bottle of some kind, and a bottle that was lasting me 3 nights or 4 nights was starting to last me 2 nights. So it's like I consciously knew it was increasing. And then it became a thing where, okay, back to your point, I'm only going to have 2 sips tonight, or I'm only going to have 2 pulls off the bottle, or however I was doing it. I would set a limit like that and inevitably pass the limit every time.
Yeah, after enough times when you pass the limit, I know for me, you became aware of it. It's like, wow, I am 0 and 100. Like, I'm not able to hold this line in the sand. When did you realize that? And did you take action? Was it kind of scary? What happens next?
What happened next, I think when I really understood that I had a problem was here in California, the lockdown was very strictly enforced. And I do remember thinking, it wasn't the first thing I thought, but it was pretty close was, wait, are they going to close all the liquor stores? How are we going to get alcohol? And like that, I honestly knew like, okay, that's not good. Didn't slow me down. I was 2020. As stated, my last drinking day was 2025. So, I kept it going from there. But I think that's when I realized that, hey, this is coming off the wheels. Obviously, I was off the road. I wasn't traveling anymore. It became very socially acceptable. Oh, let's have a noontime Zoom conference and talk to each other and drink wine. And, it became more socially acceptable just to drink during the day. And for somebody like myself, that wasn't good. Now, that didn't happen every day, but it was more like a social mindset that became very accepting of it. And I think that helped add to kind of fuel the fire, if you will. A lot of my drinking happened in isolation. So because I was very secret in my drinking, not a lot of people knew. Ultimately, even in 25, when I stopped drinking and I told my best friend that I mentioned, he was like, no way. So and so might have a problem, or so and so might, but not you. I mean, yeah, you drink a lot, but it's not a problem. So I was pretty damn good at hiding it from most people. It kept escalating. I was hiding bottles in the garage, those types of things. So I was drinking a lot, maybe a handle a week.
Are you drinking earlier and earlier in the day?
So I didn't drink in the daytime until about a month or so before I got sober. I was starting to wake up feeling hungover, feeling horrible. It really escalated. And by the end, I was drinking a couple handles a week. And I was waking up hungover every day. And the only way that I could, in my brain at that time, to feel better was to have a drink. So I would find myself at 3 in the morning getting up because I couldn't sleep well, thinking, oh, you know what? I'll have a pop. I'll go back to sleep. Then at 6, if I wake up again, do that, go back to bed. I work from home quite a bit, so I could do that sometimes. And yeah, I started drinking in the morning to try to get level or to feel better, which is a frightening thing to say out loud, but that's where it was. In my brain, it was telling me more alcohol will make you better.
Rich, did you have a moment where you could put the pieces together? All right, I'm drinking in the morning. I'm hiding my drinking from my wife. I have to drink to feel good in the morning. I might be a. What
Now,
do
I
you want
couldn't
to call
say
it?
that word, Paul, not about myself. You talk about those checklists where you might have a problem if, and I was the classic. I'd get to about the third bubble point and I'd bail out because I didn't want to finish it. It was becoming a real problem, and I knew it was a problem. And early in 25, I actually downloaded another app which had support readings and some online Zoom meetings and things like that. And it was an app that had a moderation track and a sobriety track. And I thought, okay, I can handle this. I'm going to moderate. This is the plan. I'm going to moderate. I know I'm drinking too much. I got to stop. I've had a couple of health scares. It became a real problem. And I knew in 25, I downloaded that app, started doing the meetings. That was helpful. They had some really good educational stuff that I found. I just liked reading about the science of it, like learning, okay, you're craving dopamine, the alcohol is killing your dopamine. This is why you want to drink more. This is why you have to drink more to get that same feeling. I was always chasing it. And once I had that first drink, you had that good feeling on that first drink. And then after that, you're chasing it. And it became brutal. You'd set a schedule, and I'm going to drink Friday, Saturday. I literally think I thought about drinking more, trying to moderate, than I did drinking. And let me tell you, I thought about drinking a lot because that involved getting it, hiding it, drinking it, and keeping it quiet.
So when
Um,
did you put more of the puzzle pieces together? Wait a second. I've got a problem and I can't moderate. It looks like I have to.
yeah, I didn't get there quite then, Paul. So I kept drinking. I was still hiding alcohol. My wife found a container of alcohol in my office and home, had it laid out for me, confronted me, said, I thought this had stopped. This has got to stop. She says, I'm going to tell the kids. And that scared the living hell out of me. The last thing I ever wanted was for my kids to hear about this. I begged my wife not to tell the kids. I told her I would stop. This is it. I showed her the app that I'd downloaded. I said, look, I already know I'm trying. I've been trying to moderate. It's not working. I'll do better. And she said, okay. Well, long story short, I didn't. I kept drinking. I kept hiding it. That led up to that last month where I was drinking in the morning, in the afternoon, just all the time. I went out to run an errand. I don't even remember what I was doing. Come home, and my daughter was in the living room, and my wife was there. And my wife had a look on her face I had only seen twice in my life. The look she gave me at the hospital when I told her I was hiding vodka, and the look on her face when I got home and she had set out that bottle she found in my office. And she confronted me in front of my daughter. And embarrassingly, I tried to deny it right out of the gate. And she looked at me and just she kind of shook her head. She pulled out some sheets of paper. She had been photographing the bottles in the morning when she went to work and taking pictures, before and after pictures, essentially. So I thought I was being all sly, refilling bottles, swapping bottles out, this and that. And she had photos showing, hey, they're time stamped. This is 7 a.m. This is 10 p.m. or whatever. And obviously you could see, and I was dead to rights. I actually haven't thought about that particular second, that moment. Everything was mixed up, like nothing made sense. I'm sure all my emotions, all my nerve endings, everything was just firing, right? I don't know how to describe the technical term, but everything was firing. And everything was a blur kind of on the sides. And I'll never, ever, ever forget this. I turned to the left, my daughter's sitting on the couch, and she looked at me and she said, Dad, I don't even know what to say. You've never let me down. And I can tell you, Paul, that for a guy that had set a personal goal to be an amazing father and a great husband, I just had miserably failed at both in that moment. And that was my rock bottom. I never got a DUI. I could have. I never did. I never got arrested. I never lost my job. In fact, I have a very good job. I have a nice home. I was a high functioning alcoholic. But in that moment, I was so embarrassed, humiliated, and just felt like a failure, and never, ever, ever thought my daughter would look at me like that and say that.
Rich, you said your last drink was August 8th, 2025 of last year. Was that the day this went down or August 9th?
That was that day, August 8th. I have not had a drink since then. I had had a drink earlier that day, but I have not had a drink since then.
Rich, when your wife and your daughter confronted you about that, I mean, the word for it's intervention. You got a smaller one. Was there part of you, because sometimes when that happens, an intervention, it backfires. The Rich is like, how could you take photos? What are you doing sneaking around the garage, right?
Yeah.
Was there a part of you, and this is quite common, where people dig their heels further in? Was there a part of you like not giving up the gig? I mean, we know how the story ended, but for a moment, was there a part of you that's like, give me the bottle, I'm out of here?
No, not at all. Maybe for that 1 second where I tried to deny it, right? My first reaction was to say, no, that's not true or whatever. And as soon as she had the pictures out, I knew I was got. To be honest, Paul, and I've talked to my wife about this since then, I think I wanted to get caught. And I think deep down, I knew that was the only way I was going to stop. I didn't count on my daughter being there, but to my wife's credit, and God bless her, clearly that's what it took. And as horrible a moment as that was in my life, maybe it had to happen. I do believe on some level I wanted to get caught because I was being very reckless, the way I was refilling bottles and all of that. And by the way, I thought I was so sly. And then afterwards, my wife has told me so many times, no, I knew what was going on. But she didn't confront me because she was afraid, would I blow up? Would I get angry? One of the huge guilts I carry is just the emotional stress I put on my wife through my drinking and arguments and being short-tempered and isolating myself, not going out being social, all those things. The way I treated her is truly one of the most embarrassing things I can say, and I just carry a huge amount of guilt about it.
Well, and if that can be alchemized into sober motivation or sober fuel, that can be a positive thing. What happens the rest of the day on August 8th? Because for most people, their last drink is at nighttime and they have a buffer of a night of sleep or shitty sleep
Yeah.
to catapult them or springboard them into a day of sobriety. You had to roll the rest of the day with probably like your buzz wearing off. What was that like as the hours ended in the day? Was it like, oh, wow, I'm
Yeah.
done with that? Or you're like, I don't want to be done with that, but I think I am?
Yeah. Number one, I don't think I was buzzed at the time. I mean, I had had a drink that day, but it wasn't like I'd had a bunch. By that time, your resistance and how you feel it is so out of whack that, I could have had a decent bit and not felt it. So that was actually in the early afternoon. So I don't remember a lot, to be honest, about it. I do remember that my wife obviously didn't talk to me a whole lot the rest of the day. My daughter didn't say a whole lot, ultimately gave me a hug and left because she doesn't live at home. And then I just spent a lot of time thinking. And I did think a lot about, okay, how am I going to do this? Instead of going 0 to 100, I'm going to 100 to 0. And I had gotten educated enough, especially through that app that I'd been using, to learn about withdrawal and the dangers of withdrawal and, do I need medication and those types of things. So that was probably weighing pretty heavily on my mind. I was pretty scared about what's going to happen to my body now that I've stopped this.
Were there some detox symptoms?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had the shakes, horrible sleep. My dreams were just so vivid and so angry and violent. I do remember waking up, clothes sopping wet, had the shakes. Definitely became very clear after a day or so, like, okay, your body is noticing this. And I think actually it was somewhat helpful that I'd gotten educated on it and what's going to happen to your body when you stop through that reading I've been doing since about May. And I think that helped me process it in my brain, like, okay, that's why this is happening. And I'm somebody, if I know why it's happening, I'm okay. But there's no question, I wouldn't recommend stopping the way I stopped. If you're putting down 2 handles of vodka a week, stopping cold turkey, I don't know that I'd recommend that to anybody. But I mean, it worked out and I didn't have any major medical reaction or trauma.
How long did it take for your body to reach new homeostasis after the detox? A week, 10 days?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading an article about this, and some people think it takes like a year for your body to get back to normal. But I put the number at like 10 days. About 10 days after, that's when I started to feel better. I was sleeping a little better. My mood was getting better. My day felt better. But I mean, I still had cravings and was thinking about it a lot. I had lots of triggers. Cooking dinner was a huge trigger. Every time I got in the kitchen, got out the pots and pans, this, that, and the other thing, oh man, my brain was like, drink. I mean, it was just like Pavlov's dog. Boom, drink.
Yeah, so how did you make it past those cravings? I know we're all thinking the same question.
Well, I'd like to think some good self-determination, but soda water, like flavored soda waters, if I had some sort of drink while I was cooking, that helped. But a lot of it too was just kind of buckling down and realizing by then I had educated myself enough to hear terms like play the tape forward. And even though I hadn't had enough time in sobriety to even fully understand what that meant, I did understand it from a rudimentary level that I could say to myself, okay, fine, you go have that shot. You're not going to have one, you're going to have 12. I knew that. And I knew I couldn't do that. And so I just powered through.
Yeah, we haven't heard the word AA or 12-step programs, any like formal programs.
Nothing formal. Like I said, I was doing Zoom meetings and such on an app. I started doing some reading of Quit Lit, Unbelievable Joy of Being Sober, Catherine Gray, This Naked Mind. I also read Let Them by Mel Robbins, which helped me a lot with moving away from worrying about what other people think and just worrying about myself. They're going to do what they do. They control that. I control what I do. And that was a really nice teaching tool. My wife recommended that I read that book, and I thank her for that because it's helped me a lot learn to kind of manage my emotions a little bit. I have nothing against AA, and I have attended some online AA meetings, but not feeling like maybe that's the path for me. But what I was really searching for was a sense of community. And my wife had said when I got sober, she says, look, I'm going to support you in this, but you need to find some people to talk to about this that can relate to what you're saying because I don't know what you're going through. I've never drank like that. I don't know what you're going through. And I wasn't getting that. It was about 160 days, and I felt like I'd hit a plateau, and it scared me because I didn't want to screw this up. And I've been listening to the Recovery Elevator podcast and hearing about Cafe RE, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to give that a try. I know one of the things mentioned is, are you looking for a sense of community? And that really spoke to me. So I joined Cafe RE, and that really was a turning point. So I've used that platform to develop a community of people. I have a phone full of phone numbers that I can call if I need to, that call me, online chats, things like that, that have proven instrumental in my recovery.
Yeah, Rich, and you've hosted chats. I think you've done 5 now. You're naturally gifted at communicating and leading and guiding and creating a safe space. So thank you. I've been on a couple chats that you've hosted. Thank you for being part of Cafe RE. It's not the leadership that creates it, it's the members. So thank you. You've got two kids. You mentioned your daughter with your wife in the kitchen. How about the other son, daughter?
Yeah, son, that was sort of rock bottom B. My son was living in Alaska at the time, and I had to call him on Zoom or FaceTime, I guess, and tell him basically what I'd been doing. And I had to burn the ships with my son. And that was rock bottom number two, equally as humiliating, equally as embarrassing, equally difficult. And it was a little different with him because he's very protective of his mother, and he was not happy with me, understandably so. I want to be very clear. He's been super supportive in my recovery, but it's been a little slower coming around to it because partially he lives remotely. So he's not with me all the time, seeing me interacting with my wife now, which is infinitely better. And all the different things I'm doing, he knows, that I'm doing it, that, I've got a lot of days under my belt, things like that. So he's very supportive of me, but it was a lot harder for him, I think, to come to grips with it. And also, I'd like to think he looked up to me much as I looked up to my father. And if my dad had let me down like that, it would have been pretty crushing. And so I can only really imagine how that felt for him. And it tears me up inside to think about, to be quite honest.
Rich, you've got 312 days. Incredible work, my friend. Has there been a voice that's like, we've got this? Was it really that bad? We didn't get fired. It was just like a bottle in the kitchen. Have you had those thoughts?
If so, very fleeting. I remember how bad it was. I remember making myself sick to feel better. I think once I decided, I decided. And it doesn't mean I don't think about it. I was out in the garage last night filling up dog food. It popped into my head because I used to have a bottle out there, but it didn't lead to anything. I didn't have to play the tape forward. I didn't have to do anything, but it still like floats around in there. It's not gone. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is my memories of how bad that was and what I put my wife through, especially, and then the reaction of my children, that's so vivid that it has carried me anytime I have felt remotely tempted, or even in a stressful situation or something before where I used to drink. That's been something I've had to learn how to try to manage and deal with different outlets. And I can honestly say and happily say my go-to now for that is to talk to my wife and get help from my wife. And she is a miracle.
Yeah, there was a day where dealing with emotions, you go to the bottle, and now you go towards humanity, towards your wife, towards the campfire. I love it. Rich, so you did a member spotlight in Cafe Area last week. That's where one of our members shares their story. I loved it. Great job. And then I sent you a follow-up email the next day saying, hey, how about the interview? Rich, you got back to me and said, let me think about this one. Let me run it by my family. What was that conversation like? And then I know before we hit record, you said you're nervous. And look, almost everybody before I hit record, they're like, ooh, hang on a second. They're shuffling papers. Am I really going to talk about this subject matter in front of, what was that like?
It was actually a great conversation. I talked to my wife about it. We had a really nice conversation about it. And she was almost out of the gate. She was like, do it. I made it clear, like, hey, this isn't like the member spotlight I did, which was within that universe, as I call it. I don't know how many people listen to this podcast, but it's a lot. And I just want to make sure it's something you're comfortable with me talking about. And basically, she's like, well, do I know everything? And I'm like, yeah. And she said, okay, I don't want to find it out on a podcast,
Smart
right?
woman. Good question.
It's a great question.
Wait, you what?
So she was great. I talked to my daughter, also great, and my son. Every one of them said the same thing, Paul. And it's ultimately, it was where my head was already at, but maybe I was sensitive to it because of the way that I felt I let them down previously. And I never, ever, ever want to do that again, even remotely close. I just wanted their buy-in and their acceptance because their dad and or husband is going on a podcast and talking about, where they were. And all three of them said the same thing. It could help somebody, so you should do it. Mm. My wife and I must have raised them right because their first thought was of other people, not how it was going to affect them.
Their
Or,
first thought was,
their friend's going to hear, oh, I heard was that your dad or whatever, which is totally legitimate. It's one of the reasons I wanted to ask them. But I'm abundantly proud that each one of them, but especially the kids, all said, if you can help somebody, that's worth it, Dad.
when I started the podcast, I was like, how the hell am I going to find anybody to come on here and share about their rock bottom moments? And it was hard the first 5 episodes. And then I started getting emails from people who wanted to share their story for just that purpose, to help one person. They're not selling books. Occasionally that happens. But overall, the people we get on, it's just from the average Joe you've never heard of. They're not a sobriety coach. They're not an author that want to share their story. But occasionally I reach out to people like I did with you, Rich. And to my surprise at the start, but now it makes sense, about 90% of people say yes. It's actually probably even higher than that. Occasionally somebody declines. So I just think it's so badass about you, your support system.
Oh,
Y'all rallied and said, look, if this can help somebody out there, it's a yes.
you mentioned something that is absolutely essential, and I am incredibly blessed because through people I've interacted with, not everybody has that. Some people have the opposite, where somebody's trying to fuel their drinking. And I am blessed that I have this incredible group of family members that support me and love me and are there for me. And having that sense of strength around me is so empowering and gives me so much confidence that I'm going to see this through. I tell every one of them, I say, no, I never want to drink again. And I couldn't say I'm an alcoholic a year ago or even halfway through. There was something about saying I'm never drinking again. The concept of forever was so mind-bending. And also, I didn't want to screw it up. And I didn't want to let myself and I didn't want to let anybody else down. But mostly, I was done lying. And I felt like if I said I'm never drinking again and then I did it, I'd be lying or I would have told myself a lie. Now, I'll temper that a little bit. Could I ever drink again? I suppose it's possible. I have to be wary of that. To your point earlier, no, I do not think I've got it. I think I'm in a great place and my life right now is awesome. My relationship with my wife, it hasn't been this good since we dated. I mean, we talk all the time. We have fun. We love to travel together. It's so different, the interaction between us now and the amount of time we spend together that we used to spend apart nightly. She'd go watch a TV in a separate room and I'd watch mine. And now we are blowing through streaming options because we're sitting together every night, or we're talking, or we're going out just to chat or spend time together. And I couldn't be happier about it.
Well, Rich, we have reached the rapid fire round. If you could answer these questions within 5 to 10 seconds, that'd be great. Are you ready?
Bring it.
Rich, what's the one thing you've learned about yourself since quitting drinking?
I've learned that in spite of what I thought, I can keep some control over my emotions and that I can regulate when needed, but naturally and not with alcohol.
What's your best sober moment?
My best sober moment was a few months ago. I was in Alaska with my wife. We were snowmobiling with my son and my daughter-in-law. And I was on a snowmobile. I'm up on kind of not on a glacier, but a mountain covered in snow, 360 panoramic view. I've got full throttle on the snowmobile. I'm bouncing, feeling great, no hangover, just having the best time. And I screamed into my helmet where only I could hear it, but I still screamed it. I was overcome. I screamed out, I love my sober life.
Oh, wow.
And that was so memorable. And I've thought about that so many times.
Step aside, vodka. What are you drinking these days, Rich?
So I am a fan of NA beers. For me, they're not a trigger. Guinness Zero is next level. It tastes like Guinness.
What's the point of life?
I have a feeling a lot of people think about this one. It's a pretty heavy question. It's more of a personal aim than the meaning, which is to treat others as I'd like to be treated, with love, acceptance, and respect.
Rich, what's your secret ingredient in your clam chowder?
Oh, Paul, I can't tell you that. Nice try, but honestly, I don't tell anybody.
I didn't think I'd get it either. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I mean, it's not like I won't eat it, but no, I'm a no on pineapple on the pizza.
Then what parting piece of guidance can you give to somebody who wants to quit drinking?
Other than do it, just take some time if you can, even in the current state that you're in, and really think about where your life is. And then try to carry that over into action and seek help because you can't do it by yourself. It takes a community of people, and you can find people out there, even if they're not your family, but you can't do it alone, in my opinion. And you need support. You need places to go for a safe harbor during the process because it is tough.
Hey, Rich, before we depart, you might need to ditch the booze if line. Let's hear it.
If you're choosing your hotels based on the location of the liquor store nearby, so you can walk there and walk back, yeah, you may have a problem.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. We're both in the right spot, Rich. This hour has just flown by. Rich, so great chatting with you. Thanks for coming on the RE podcast, my man.
It was my pleasure, Paul. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank our production team for today's episode. We have our editor, Natasha, Robin on the show notes, and Chris on the ones and twos, putting it all together. Recovery Elevator, you took the elevator down. You got to take the stairs back up. We can do this.
I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior.